Guys, welcome to this video where I talk about the 4 stages of having a spiritual awakening because I feel like I'm coming out on the other end of my spiritual awakening. It's been a very long process of maybe 4 to 5 years of going through an awakening. And I know that we have multiple awakenings throughout our life, but I'm talking about the big spiritual awakening where you realize that there is way more to life than just our ego and the physical world. And I believe that many people are going through that shift because we are going through that shift as a whole collective here on earth. And I remember when I was in the midst of my awakening that I was thinking a lot about when is this ever gonna end? When am I going to get out on the other side of this whole process of shedding my ego and feeling delusional? And I know it can be really exhausting. And for some people, the awakening process can be a quick, pleasant one, but for most people, it can be really hard and also isolating. So I wanted to make this video to give you an insight of the different stages that I feel there are in this journey, so you can see for yourself, where am I right now? What do I need in this phase? And what can I look forward to? What is it that I'm going to work towards? And of course, you don't really need to know where this is all leading you towards, because I believe that you probably already have a knowing, an intuitive knowing of where this whole process is leading you towards, because the spiritual journey, the spiritual awakening journey, is a very intuitive journey. But I just want to make this video to soothe your ego a little bit, and give you some clarity of this process. So the first stage of the spiritual awakening is when you shift out of your ego, when you realize that you are so much more than just your ego. And that is in this phase, when before the awakening, you are actually living your life based on the conditioning that you developed over the years here on earth. So the belief systems that your family, your school, your friends, the media have taught you about how the world works and who you are in that world. And your whole life is probably set up in a way that aligns with that conditioning. So you have made many decisions based off your ego. So your job, your work, the things you do on the weekends are mostly programmed, and just an example of how most people live their lives. So that is actually the first phase, still operating from the ego. I feel that in this phase you are still sleeping, you're not aware of what your inherent power actually is. So then you have the second stage, and that is when you wake up to the truth that that's not completely the truth of who you are. You are so much more. And that is when you realize that you are actually a spiritual being having a temporary human experience. That's when you realize that you are not your ego. You can observe your ego, and you feel the separation between your true essence, the observer, and the avatar you're playing in this life. And then you see this gap between who am I in my essence, in my core, and who am I showing up as in this reality. And from that process on, it's all about closing that gap. So learning to shed the layers of your ego in order to come back to your core, to your essence, so you can show up in a more authentic way in this physical reality. So that is the second phase, and I feel like this can be a very beautiful phase because you wake up to a higher truth, but it can also be a very existential period in your life, because this is the period where you start to question everything, and the truths that you had about yourself and the world are falling away. And when one truth falls away, but there's not still a new one in place, you're in this in-between phase that feels very uncomfortable. And the only thing that you really have in this phase is your intuition and faith in God, the divine, whatever you want to call it, to trust that everything is happening for a reason, that everything is happening for your highest good. So that is what I would recommend if you're in this phase. Really lean on faith, because that's probably the only thing that is going to keep you sane, and connect with other people that are also going through an awakening or have come out on the other end, in order to don't feel very disconnected from from the outside world, because there are people that have compassion for what you're going through and even understand what you're going through. And I know that in this phase, you can think that you're going crazy, but you're actually not. You're just, your ego is dissolving and your ego is fighting to stay alive. And that's actually what the uncomfortability is that you're going through right now. So then we have the third stage, and that is probably the hermit phase. And that is when you really dive deeper into the spiritual journey. You surrendered mostly to the path that you started on, and you feel this need to go deep, to connect with your inner self. So you go deep down rabbit holes about spirituality, maybe numerology, maybe tarot, astrology, all these topics, maybe even star seeds, things like that. And in this phase, you are really learning so much in a short period of time, because you are consuming a lot of new information, because you are ready to receive these new truths. And you're also not, you don't really feel connected with the physical reality in this phase anymore, because you have let go of that old version of you that was plugged in to that reality. So it can also feel quite lonely to be in the hermit phase, because you don't really know how to connect with others. You only feel this need to have deep conversations, to unravel your trauma, to feel through the motion, to connect with nature. And you only want to talk about spirituality and connect with spiritual people. And this phase can take quite a long time, because it took a really long time for me to be in the hermit phase. And I kept pushing myself to get out there, but I wasn't really ready yet, because I didn't feel like I was completely integrated in my new self. So I kept feeling this misalignment with my outer reality. And that can feel very draining if you feel like you can't truly show up as your authentic self. Like, imagine being in this hermit phase, diving deep into your traumas and spirituality, but still needing to show up, having to show up at your 9 to 5 job, where people are talking about buying a house and climbing the corporate ladder. It can be very exhausting. And it's not to say that there's something wrong with living a life like that, because we are all at different levels of consciousness, and we are all here to have a different experience on this physical reality. But it's not the path that resonates with you at that very moment. So that's why it feels very draining to still having to force to plug in to that system. And that's why it can be very helpful to just go within, surrender to it, and see how the path unfolds when you surrender to it. Because that's also when the hermit phase will go faster, because you're open to face all your shadows and fears and darkness and loneliness. But this is also a beautiful phase, because in this phase you are also going to connect with your inner self. And I also felt very strongly connected with the divine. I really felt as if I wasn't going through it alone, because I had so many signs, synchronicities that I saw in my reality, that also showed me some comfort, some support of the things that I was going through. And I remember that in this phase I really felt some frustration, because I was like, when is it time to not feel connection with the spiritual realm? When is it time to finally feel connection in the physical world again? Because it feels so lonely. And that is actually the last phase, the fourth phase that I want to talk about. And that is when you actually integrated this whole expansion of consciousness into your being. You got rid of the old grid, and the new grid got completely integrated in your new self. So in this phase, you start to feel more comfortable with who you really are. You start to embrace your authentic self. You are living more from the state of being, instead of the state of thinking who you should be or thinking how you should act. You're just being, and you have this feeling of self-acceptance, of love, of compassion towards yourself. And when you're at that space, you're able to show up in the world as your authentic self. And when you have this love for yourself, you don't you don't care as much anymore about the projections from people outside of yourself, because you realize that people will always have an opinion about who you are. But because you validate yourself, it doesn't really matter what they think about you. So why not show up authentically? And this is the most exciting phase. I'm really stepping into this phase right now, and I know that it comes in waves. But in this phase, you're ready to step into the physical reality again and plug in the matrix, but as your authentic self. So you're ready to step deeper into your mission. And in this phase, you are, instead of escaping the physical reality by being spiritual, it's time to master the physical reality and create in the physical reality, to really live in your purpose. And that is the thing. The stages before the last phase are stages where you really shift your consciousness. So you're learning so many new things. But in the last stage, you are going to apply everything that you learned. So you probably learned that you know that you have to meditate, do your affirmations, do the inner child healing, take aligned action, have a vision, visualize, all these things. You know that's what you need to do in order to create your reality, right? To be a conscious creator. That's what this whole channel is about. But in the last stage, you are finally ready to start applying it. So you get this routine. It's not about seeing yourself identifying as a spiritual person, it's more about practicing these spiritual teachings. So practice the law of assumption. Assume, work on your self concept, do the work, do the affirmations. And when you start doing this actively, it becomes a part of your paradigm. It becomes a part of who you are. So instead of having to identify with your spiritual self, it just becomes a part of who you are. And in this phase, you are not identified as much anymore with being spiritual. You just know that the things that you learned in this spiritual phase are just helping you to really live life in this physical reality. And this is probably also the part where you heal the most things within yourself. And of course, healing is an ongoing journey, but there are different levels of consciousness. And in this phase, you are really becoming the creator of your reality. You are not in reaction mode anymore. This is where you are going to see the results. This is where you are going to reap the fruits from of all the things that you went through in the previous phases. So if you're not yet in this stage, know that this is waiting for you and have patience with it, because when you're at that place, it's gonna be so worth it. And when you're not there yet, you are exactly where you're meant to be. If you're still in the hermit phase, there are still some things for you to uncover. There are still things for you to integrate, to heal, to go deeper into. And I believe that even when you reach the fourth stage, there will still be phases where you retreat and go within. But the difference is that you don't feel isolated when you do that anymore. You know it's necessary for you to do so in order to come back into this world with a new vision. So yeah, I feel that these are the 4 stages. I'm very curious where you guys are in your journeys, with who I'm even communicating through this channel. So please let me know, how did your spiritual awakening happen? What was the instigator? In which phase are you right now? And I'm also curious, what are other topics that you would like to hear me talking about? So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Oh, and that is the thing, I found out I'm a manifesting generator, and because of that, I wanted to upload more intuitively. So when I feel this inspiration to act upon, then I will just upload a video. So I won't be posting consistently. I just will go with the flow and see which topics resonates with me. So if you guys leave topics that I also feel passionate about to share, then I would definitely make a video about it. So that's it for now, and I hope to see you in my next video.